righty. Good morning. So you guys can see me because I can't see myself, so I'm assuming.
Let me see. So do you see the request to start a video?
Okay, start my video. Okay, there I am. Okay. I'm like, am I here? Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, first of all, Elona, for having me this morning to share my story about the Rape Kit Backlog. As you briefly told them a little bit about my story, I was raped when I was 13 years old here in Texas. I lived in the Dallas area at the time, and we were in the West Dallas area. And so the perpetrator came through a front window, raped me at knife point, violently raped me at knife point, and he left out the back door. The thing about that, at 13 years old, a child, you thinking once the police came out, which we did call the police out, even though the rapist told me he knew my family. If I said anything, he'll come back and kill me and my family. I still was that little girl that was like, okay, I'm gonna take a chance because the things that just happened to me didn't make sense. So we called the police. The police came out. They did fingerprints. They did, they surveyed the area. They took me to Parkland Memorial Hospital where they proceeded with the SANE exam, the rape kit. I always call that my second violation because it's so evasive and how they do you in the exam. I don't know if you ever seen a rape kit, how it's done, but I mean, it's like poking and probing and pictures and asking you questions, and for a 13-year-old, it was overwhelming. For anybody, that kind of system can be overwhelming. So after this happened, I'm thinking that my case is being reviewed. It's trying to be solved. And the police came out maybe like the next day or the day after to my aunt's house because I moved. I told my mom I couldn't go back there, so I stayed with my aunt. They brought a bunch of photo books, I guess, of criminals that was wanted or had been incarcerated before. And I remember vividly, they kept showing me several pictures of the same guy in different books. And I was that type of kid. I was like, you know what? You've already showed me him. It's not him. So they pretty much left me alone after that. Fast forward, my life goes on. I'm thinking, one day they'll call me, they'll tell me, we found your rapist. So much has transpired over the years. You think about it in the back of your mind, but you don't think about it because you figure one day something will happen. Well, I get married, I have a family. In the meantime, still the victim is coming, is brewing inside of me. And mostly because I didn't know whatever happened. And I didn't go for we didn't go to counseling or anything like that. So after all this happens, I want to say in 1995, 96, I start my journey of healing. And I said my journey of healing was by my faith. And that took me until 2005 is when I started to reach out and wanted to help other victims. Well, fast forward to 2005, in the 2005, 2006, the Dallas Police Department started a sexual assault cold case initiative. And what that is, they had found that they had a lot of rape kits that was actually sitting on the shelves at the UT Southwestern Medical Center facility where they were untested rape kits. Sergeant Welch, Patrick Welch, I call him my knight in shining armor, had no idea they were there until there was another lady that had got her kit wanted information about status about her case.
So
and so
this let me ask real quick. So aren't rape kits supposed to be frozen or refrigerated?
They are supposed. I don't fully understand the whole scope. I think part of the evidence is supposed to be frozen, and I guess the rest of it, like your clothing and all of that, is like put up in a package because they had to find it. Right. Had to find all of my my evidence is what it is my evidence. And so when I contacted Sergeant Welsh about this, it took them about, I want to say, the first 3 months to even find my case, which the documented part of it, and it took them a few like another 6 months to find my actual rape kit. that thought alone scared me, that it took that long to find this information, because it made me think like maybe they were trying to put a puzzle together. Maybe a piece was over here, a piece was over there, a piece. I had no idea that they had to like go through thousands of kits, and that's just for the Dallas area. That's not even the state of Texas. At the time, the state of Texas, it was like it was close to 20,000 rape kits that were sitting on shelves in the state of Texas. And
I'm sorry, you said Western Dallas. I just left Dallas, so I used to live in Wiley.
Yeah,
So
Dallas.
Out there?
West Dallas, no, Wiley is like a suburb, as more north of Dallas. West Dallas is more on the opposite side of downtown Dallas.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. And so we found out at the time it was about 20,000 rape kits on shelves in the state of Texas, and it was in mine. I don't remember the number that it was in Dallas, but when I found out that there were that many kits, is when I decided, you know what, this can't happen to anybody else, because with my kit, I also discovered that my statute of limitations had ran out. I found out that they actually put my kit on they call it a suspension after 3 days after my assault, and they said because they didn't have enough evidence. So that kind of, spiraled me. I was a little bit angry with that, because so I'm thinking 20-something years you're looking, and 3 days later you put my stuff just on the shelf. And so I was like, no, this is unacceptable for any department to do, because victims are out here, basically living hopelessly, thinking that their cases are being solved and things are progressing in their favor, and nothing is actually happening. So with that, after he resolved the kit, I missed 2 statute of limitations, as a matter of fact, because the first one was 5 years, and then they changed it 10 years after the 18th birthday. And so now with the laws, since I've been fighting, there is no statute of limitations with DNA evidence. But it was a horrific experience because I didn't get a chance to prosecute my perpetrator because I had missed both my statute of limitations. They said that they have rights. Perpetrators have rights, and we were going against their constitutional rights to go back and try to prosecute with that. So on that note, in 2009, we end up putting another law in effect for DNA for those who missed the new law of the DNA now, who the victims now. So what happens in the state of Texas is if you're under that grandfather clause where rapists have rights, which kills me even say that, if you miss that, there's a law we put in place where the DNA goes onto their records, their DPS records, the evidence. And what happens if they violate, if they do any other kind of crime in the state of any state, that judge sees that, and at his or her discretion can say, I'm going to give you, where it only caused them to get so many years, they can give them maximum years because they see that evidence that they were never tried for. In my case, such in my case, and they can hold it against them. The good thing about my perpetrators, he's still in prison. Unfortunately, because he was a serial rapist, he raped other women after me, and not even having my evidence against him. But what happened was he was coming up for parole, and the state of Texas and the police department, they protested his parole, and I protested the parole as well. So they get like an offset every 3 years to either stay behind bars. Now that was in 2006. The law came into effect, the new law, 2009, where I was good with, okay, if he gets out, if he does anything else, he can get, knocked back up again. But I guess with the system in Texas, and my story has made so much noise, and I've done so much noise for other victims, that I don't even protest his parole anymore. But every time he comes up for parole, they'll send me a letter, and then they deny him. Another thing about it, a good thing we did, was he was not a registered sex offender. And I was like, oh, hell no, excuse my French. He rapes women. He breaks in windows of children. He breaks in the windows of elderly women. He carjacked women, and he rapes them. He is a sex offender. So I fought to have that changed and adjusted. So now he's a registered sex offender. The journey has been long and tedious, but it's worth it, because to know that these things are happening, where kids are sitting on shelves, where it's basically people's lives, evidence, things that happen, crimes against them, and rapists are walking around, living in your neighborhood, my neighborhood, next door to your children, your grandchildren, your auntie, your uncles, your nieces. It has, something has to be done about it. So this is why I took it, and I said, this is my calling, and this is what I do. I've served on a task force with Congress, a national task force for Rape Kit Backlog. I've worked with Mariska Hargitay organization, Joyful Heart Foundation. She flew us out in 2010, and we gave them ideas about how to reform the rape kit, things that work for us, and how we felt they should do as far as contacting the victims and getting this done. And then, of course, here in the state of Texas, I just got an email when I was trying to log on, it dinged me. We're doing the LAVINIA Masters Act, which is a bill that's proposed for my namesake for the work I've done, and a survivor of the Rape Kit Backlog. We're now getting ready to go to the Senate, and they said that's Wednesday, so they want me in Austin on Wednesday. It passed the House, all 145 yeas, no nays. Victoria NEAVE, Representative Hurt. It's a bipartisan bill. She has many co-authors on this, and I think they really figured out this time how to do a reform in the state of Texas from the beginning to the end, as far as getting the rape kits processed in a timely fashion, holding different departments and different heads accountable that they're doing their job, notifying victims, and all that stuff that's very important that they missed before. And we're going to ensure that it doesn't happen again to another victim in the state of Texas, and for me, anywhere, nationwide, worldwide.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so how long has this Lavinia Masters Act been on the table? Like, how does someone get something like that started?
Well, I had no idea she was going to name it after me. What we did was last session, she started a task force, Victoria NEAVE.
How long ago was last session?
Last session was last year. I'm bad with politics because I'm really not into them. So I guess the session runs from February to like June of each year. Mm-hmm. So I guess last session she started a task force, and a sexual assault task force in Texas, just like the one I was a part of in Congress. And so we would meet once a month, and we would come together with the different ideas, like Title IX. We did a lot of, she did a lot of sexual assault and sexual violence laws she was trying to do for the state of Texas. And so we knew the Rape Kit Backlog. We had a somewhat agenda in place, but it was never really properly done or even processed here in Texas. So she took that, and she basically reformed it with other co-authors, bipartisan, and from top to bottom, like I said, as far as how they notify us, I think a tracking system for the rape kits, everything, the cost of it, who pays, where it's processed, how it's stored, everything she worked out in this. And so I was there in the phase with her, but I had no idea, what they were trying to do until a few months ago, February of this year. She called me, and before she presented it to the Public Safety Committee, she said, "Lavinia, we want to name this after you for the work you've done for victims and how much you helped us on this, and all the work you've done for the state and Congress." And I'm like, okay. It blew me away at first because I was not expecting that. And she said, "We want to do it for your namesake." And of course I cried because I'm a crybaby. I get emotional. I was honored and humbled that they even thought of me doing it, because that's not the reason I do the work I do. But they felt, due diligence to name it for my sake. And so I was like, okay. And so I went to Austin a few times to do the press release on it. And then we went back for the House, and the House voted, like I said, the public safety, they wanted a few nicks done, but they were supported it. and then it went to the House and the Alpha 145, no objections, and now it's getting ready to go to the Senate. And once it completes the Senate, it goes to the governor to sign into law for the state of Texas, which he's already shown his support on Twitter and in the media that he's supporting this 100%. So it's pretty exciting. And like I said, I had no idea, I had no plan on, something. I wasn't looking for a law in my name. I was just looking to do the work of helping victims. So to me, I call it my sprinkles on my ice cream, of God giving me sprinkles on my ice cream for the work I do, and, doing it due diligent and doing it from a place of compassion for other victims, because I was that victim that felt like it was a damning place to be there, and to think that nobody cared about me. They had totally forgot about me and what happened to me as a child. And so I made a vow that I wouldn't allow that to happen anymore, no matter what I had to do. I mean, because like I said, I started in 2005, and when I found how the laws were and things were, I would go to my representatives out here in Denton County, and I write letters, and I just made noise about it. You couldn't shut me up. You still can't shut me up. And so I ended up going to South Africa. They brought me to South Africa 2 weeks because there's a big problem there in the state of Africa, country of Africa. And we did a DNA for South Africa. I did stuff for Canada. I did stuff for different states on CNN, where they would, wanted my ideas and progression, because I made so much noise about it. And I just did the work. And so when she wanted to do the namesake, I was honored and humbled to be a part of it.
It sounds like they just have to make noise and do the work and bug their
Yes,
local representatives.
yes. Yeah, and I love it because, when you read about people getting laws named after them, a lot of critics say that's one of the worst things to do, because usually a victim had to sacrifice, and a victim is really not ready for that, or a victim lives. And I said, I guess I'm that different type of person, because I'm not a victim anymore. I'm actually a survivor that's thriving. And so that's why it's humbling for me, because I kind of like the idea of my attitude and my face of the type of person that thrives after this, and that's fighting for something like this versus a victim. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like a whole thing to me. Is like you see what happens when you resolve these rape kits. You get this person now, this person that was once broken, that's now whole, after going through this. And I think that's a good thing.
Okay. Thanks. Do you have a question, Michael?
No questions. I just wanted to thank you for sharing everything that you've talked about. I mean, it really is inspiring.
Thank you
that you can affect change on a local and international scale. I think that's a fantastic thing.
Thank you. It's important, and that's one reason I do my message, because I want more people to be involved in their communities, because that's what it's about. It's about us. We're saving our fellow man, our siblings, our families, our future, and so we can do something. It's not that we have to be high, and I think I put a post up before. Our platform is our voice. We don't need an actual platform to go out and say, oh, I need a stage to tell. No, I didn't have a stage. I just used my voice. Something that's stripped from victims. When you're a victim in Tyler, you don't talk about it. But I was like, you know what? No, I have to use my voice. I have to talk, whatever I have to do. I remember I shared in one of my events, one of my things I've done, I went to, I think it's Meetup, because I was trying to figure out a way to get other victims involved. So I did a Meetup thing, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this group. I want us to come meet and support. This was years ago. And when Meetup first came out, and people actually came, and they were driving like an hour away, to meet and let's talk about this and let's release this. And so, now I see it quite often, but I was like the oddball, because I couldn't find anything anywhere. And I had families to contact me, and they were like, Lavinia, hey, can you help me with this? Because I don't see anybody else that's on the internet that's local trying to do this for victims. And so I had other advocates who would come and wanted to be advocates, and I would just mentor them or give them ideas. And I still do the same thing, because is work for everybody. I can't do everything by myself. And so we have to do this as a community. We have to care about one another, because, you know, it's like the young man, and I hate he lost his life, you know, but this is, you know, in Carolina, when the school shooting here recently, last week, and he went before his class to try to stop the shooter, and he lost his life. And that was a heroic and brave. It was sad, but I'm like, this is what we do. We somebody has to be willing to make a sacrifice for the greater good, you know. And so, I just, that touched me so. It touched me so, how he did that. You know, I know he didn't go to school that day to plan on losing his life, but, you know, this is the world we live in. It's so many evils. It's so many uncertainties in this world, but somebody has to step up and say, you know what, I have to make a change. I have to make a difference for my future, for future generations. I have purpose. And that's one reason I'm driven to do this as well.
Well, thank you again. And I think you touched on three things that I think really need to change, you know, upcoming, whether it's at a local level or national level.
Yes.
That statute of limitations, just the laws in general.
Yes.
And then resources, because I mean, think 20 years ago, a lot of the resources we have today didn't exist.
Exactly.
And how would you find support, you know, for any of these issues? Resources didn't exist.
Right.
I'm proud to be part of it.
I didn't know that we had the resources back then. That's the sad part. I didn't know I had counseling. I didn't know I could go to a rape crisis center, and it doesn't matter how old your crime was, that you can get counseling or you can get victim crimes compensation. But we didn't, you know, this type of stuff was not just known to us as victims. And so this is part of the awareness we raise with all of this. Victims need to know that there is help and there is hope for them out there. So exactly.
Well, and I think you also touched on with the gentleman that ended up losing his life, but he had the will to act.
Yes.
I think that was a really, really big theme.
Yes.
That people finding their voices and finding the will to act.
Yes, important, very important. Exactly.
So Michael, you talk to victims quite a bit. Can you tell, like, when they're at that point where they're ready to act, they're ready to fight, or is there something that you do to kind of support them when they're there, or you just support them through that victim stage? He works with a hotline.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just for confidentiality reasons, I'm not going to go into any specifics, but really, it's more about meeting people where they are. A lot of people do have, along with what's going on in their life, they may have additional issues, not being able to tell family members, and shame or guilt around that, and meeting the people where exactly they are, and taking a step back and saying that this interaction, this conversation isn't about me. I'm going to take all my personal bias and everything out of the conversation and just let people talk. And I think that's one of the really most important things, is letting people talk and listening to them. Because when you listen to people, that's when you find out where their next steps want to be. It may not be apparent to them, especially if people are dealing with things like, suicidal ideation and things like that, but being able to find like sources of hope in those kinds of things is really key, I find.
Okay. So you are able to find sources of hope where people, they may not realize it or know how, but they want to do something.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it could be as simple as something that's self-care, that's, putting on that movie or that record that everyone likes, that just calms them down. And so it's being caring, but also probing a little bit just to see where people find their sources of strength. And it's a very delicate balancing act.
Okay. So Lavinia,
yes,
so you're doing the act, and it's going to be presented to the Senate on Wednesday
morning. Yes.
I live in Pennsylvania, and I was at a town hall meeting at the state, at the courthouse. They were passing Marcy's Law into the Senate, and they had this big to do. and the press was out. Is that what's going to happen on Wednesday? Are you speaking?
Yes, that's what she was saying. She wanted me to do my testimony on Wednesday morning to them. Yes. And so we do the testimony and then they do the vote. I think they feel normally they don't have normally they don't have during the Senate process. She said normally they don't have a testimonial. Usually it's just going through the thing of the paper and everything, but they feel that it will be more compelling if I come and share my story to the Senate and let them put a face and hear my story and hear my strength after the Rape Kit Backlog and all of that. So I think that's a trip that I need to make as well.
Austin is beautiful, so it'll be a nice trip. Yeah. So if someone has this issue and they do have questions about their rape kit, what's the first place they should go? Should they follow up with that detective, or should they go to their state rep?
They should, if they have questions about their rape kit in the state of Texas, they should contact the police department, and every police department should have a crimes against victim unit, and they should take their information down from them, and they'll take them through the steps from there. We also have a non-report where some victims have not, they did their evidence, but they haven't reported, basically, I go ahead and say snitched on who the person is, or, did all of that part yet, because some of them still are in fear. Part of this law would give them additional years on that non-report of that. And I also want to touch on that a little bit because that's very important to me, how we do the evidence, that the evidence is very important to get. And I say that because of this. Some people, when they're raped, like I was, when you're raped, you are thrown in just like a whole nother dimension of fear. And if you're like a college student or somebody rapes you that you may know or think you know or don't know at all, and if they like me, 13, he told me, I know your family. I was terrified where I told my mom I cannot go back. I left from the hospital to my aunt's house, but I still told it. So what we're doing is I want to plead to victims that if you are sexually assaulted, within 72 hours, get to the police and get your evidence taken, or get to the hospital and get your evidence taken and let it be stored. You don't have to go through the whole process just yet, pressing charges or trying to do this. We're giving you that right. We're giving you your rights or your control, because we know that feel like you've lost so much control being victimized. But we need that evidence. And the reason why we need that evidence, because I'm telling you, a rapist, like I'm so upset with the Pinchy thing where the judge goes, oh, he's never raped anybody before, or he doesn't have any other crimes, and so the guy's not serving any jail time. That aggravated me, because what if somebody didn't report him yet, or what if somebody evidence is sitting on a shelf that can link them to this perpetrator that the judge just walked away. And so that's why it's important that we get this evidence in, because with this evidence, even though if you're not willing to report yet, we can still use that evidence and run it through a DNA database, and it could possibly match up with somebody else, because we've had it where a rapist in Texas, the DNA database code it matches up with somebody that's in Louisiana now, or in New York now. And so it's important because they think they're getting away, these rapists, these perpetrators, and we think that they're innocent because, oh, I don't show any of the crimes against you, but which is far from the truth. So that's the importance of the non-report, that we get this evidence in, that victims, if you are violated, that's something I want to stress. Please go to your authorities or the hospital. Let them know within 72 hours. Don't bathe. Don't try to change anything, but get the evidence to the hospital. And you won't be pressured. You won't be pressured into saying, okay, let's go after anything like that. Just get it to, where we can have access to it, or where the authorities can have access to it, because you can also be saving somebody else's life, or can bring a criminal to justice that maybe raped and killed a victim, and so we have to be mindful of that. And so that's why it's important that we push, the issue, so we can stop, stop these rapists in their tracks of what they're doing. The sad part about my rapist, although I didn't get to prosecute him, I didn't know that I didn't know who he was. I had no earthly idea who he was. After he raped me, he went on and raped other women. They finally caught him. He went to prison. He served prison for 10 years. All this time, they still didn't give him a rapist. They didn't give him a sex offender charge. They sex offender registered him. They only made him burglary, cohabitation, and carjacking. He was able to plea down. The sad part about that was he served in the prisons for 10 years. He got out in 10 years. When he got out, it was, I want to say like 2 months later, he broke into an elderly woman's home, went through her window and raped her at knife point, same MO as me. And that had me, that infuriated me. I'm like, that could have been my grandmother. That woman could have died. I mean, all of us could have, but it's just, that was really my sparking moment when I saw that. And I was like a pit bull ever since then. I said, no, this is crazy how this happens, so
I'm sorry. So let me understand. What you're saying is, if someone is raped, they can go and get a rape test, a rape kit done.
Yes.
But you're saying they don't have to press charges. The
Right.
evidence goes into the system.
Yes.
And it'll come up if he does something later. They can match.
Or if he's already done something. Yes.
Yeah. So the person who had been raped and submitted the information doesn't have to go to trial, doesn't have to speak about it. Okay.
And then
I don't think a lot of people realize that.
No, they don't. And the thing about the non-reports.
Hold on, Lavinia, I think Michael wants to say something.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a quick question about that, and I know this is probably different for every locality, but I don't know. Do they do a lot of hospital accompaniment with advocates from crisis centers?
As a matter of fact, I'm one of those
where you are
advocates as well. Yes, the hospital companies do that as well. Yes.
Because that was something I was trained in. I thought it was a huge benefit.
It is. That's something I promote as well when I do my talks, and people want to get involved. And I tell them, I said, you know what, go to your local rape crisis center, and we call them SART, Sexual Assault Response Team. And I'm like, it is so, you have no idea how much that helps a victim to know that somebody's there to actually just support them and them alone. And so, yes, that's very, very awesome that you mentioned that as well, to do that, be able to have somebody there with them. And that person can also, I know here in Texas, they're all properly trained, so they will know, and they can share that information with them, that you don't have to report right now. The evidence, will take the evidence, and you don't have to do the report. But we gave them an additional 2 years on their non-report, where before it was like 3 years. We give them an additional 2 years to come back and say, okay, now I'm ready to press charges against this person.
Good. Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's good for you, especially doing a hotline, to know that that's something that you can. I think that's something that's compelling, because so many are so afraid to tell. And I think that's all part of like how this Me Too movement is driven. And so many people are coming out that didn't tell before, and people are like, why they didn't say anything then? Until you walk in their shoes, you've been in that position. Everybody doesn't have that spunk, or that just, I'm gonna take a chance and tell now, to not tell, so you have to be mindful of that. It's a very scary place.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I don't have any more questions. Do you have questions, Michael?
No, I think we covered everything. I just went the hospital accompaniment as our last one.
Yeah.
I think that's great. So we're going to check out a little early, but I want to thank you, Lavinia, for sharing your story and your tips. And I took notes, so I'm going to do a follow-up for the people who missed it. And
okay. Because I know I had a lot of people contact me and said they were coming, and I said, I hope they knew it was 11 o'clock our time.
That might be it, yeah.
Yeah, I was in Dallas this weekend, and I planned something, and I was still on East Coast time, and I totally missed it. But yeah, they can always get the link. So I'll make the link available.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you for
the
having
time.
me. It's always a pleasure to raise awareness about this and to bring things to the light. And people that may see this after they look at the link, if you're not in the state of Texas, whatever state you're in, I would definitely, if you want to get involved, look up your laws online and see what the statute of limitations are. Inquire about the Rape Kit Backlog. If the law is not, if it's not in effect, a good law in effect for victims, do something about it. Make noise. Write your congressman. Go to your local legislators. You know, but this is an important thing. I know the Joyful Heart Foundation, Mariska Hargitay, how you say her name, sorry, the actress, she did an I Am Evidence and video about it and all the evidence that's stacked up. These are people's lives that are sitting on these shelves. So everybody can definitely get involved on your local level, your state level, and do something about it and say, hey, what are we doing about these rape kits? And if somebody is raped, if you help somebody and as an advocate, you can say, hey, turn your evidence in, even if you don't want to report, especially college students. You know, the Title IX, she's also revamping how Title IX is done here in Texas to give the victims more protection. You know, because I can imagine in school and college, we figure we do a lot of crazy things. Yeah, we was drinking. Yeah, you know, I did here. Maybe I feel, no, I shouldn't have went there. But because right to violate you in that way. So get involved. Get involved is what I always like to say. Just get involved and have compassion for people. And like Michael said earlier, willing to act. Have that will to act when it comes down to thinking about others.
All right. Thank you, Lavinia, so much. And thank you, Michael, for joining us again.
I appreciate everything.
Have a good day.
All right, you too.
Guys.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.